Picture a house 14 feet wide. Now put 10 people in it. Add one cold water tap, one outdoor privy shared with the weather, one coal fire that has to be fed like an animal, and a baby who does not believe in night. Add a copper in the scullery that eats a whole Monday every week, a tin bath hanging on a nail in the yard, and a parlour so sacred that children enter it roughly as often as they enter heaven. That's an ordinary London terrace in 1885, not a slum, not a mansion. The great in-between. A house where the rent is paid on time and the doorstep is whitened every morning, and where 3 girls sleep in one bed and call it normal because it is. We're going back there tonight, not to the palaces and not to the workhouse, to the house in the middle. 1 year, 1 family, 1 street in Kentish town. Everything they would have carried, scrubbed, counted, cooked, shared, and survived. And I want to be straight with you about one thing before we go in, because you know I always am. The house is real. The street is real. The prices, the wages, the school pence, the wash day, the dates, all of it comes out of household budgets and school logbooks and newspapers that still exist. But the family itself is stitched together from 100 real families who left their traces in those pages, and the eyes I'm about to lend you belong to a girl history never bothered to name. The rooms are documented. She is on loan. That's the deal every time, and I'll always tell you which is which. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, after all this time I still can't work out whether anyone genuinely sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who find it soothing to hear how 10 people took turns in 1 tin bath in front of a kitchen fire, in strict order of age, in water that had opinions by the end. Either way, you're my kind of people. Subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. Here we go. The baby is crying through the wall and you are already up. Not getting up. Up. Standing in the dark kitchen with Ernest on your hip, jiggling him in the particular rhythm that works. 2 small bounces and a sway. 2 small bounces and a sway. While your free hand rakes yesterday's ashes through the bars of the range. The poker is cold. The lino under your bare feet is colder, a flat black cold that comes up through your soles like water. Somewhere above you a bed creaks as somebody turns over into your warm spot, and you feel the loss of that blanket the way other people feel the loss of money. It is a few minutes past 6 on a Monday morning in March, 1885, and the fire is the first job of the day because the fire is the first job of every day. Nothing in this house happens without it. No tea, no porridge, no shaving water for your father, no hot water for the copper, no warmth for the baby, nothing. A dead range is a dead house. You rake with one hand. The ash sifts down into the pan with a dry whisper, and the smell rises. Last night's cinders, a ghost of yesterday's dinner, the faint sourness of soot that lives in the walls of every room and every coat and every curtain in London. Under it, closer, the milky, warm, slightly ammonia smell of the baby himself, who has stopped crying now because he is being held, which was the entire substance of his complaint. And under that, on your own hands, the smell of yesterday. Soda, black lead, onions. Your hands are 12 hours old before the day even starts. You lay the fire the way you've laid it 1,000 times without looking, because your eyes are still half shut and the kitchen is still mostly dark. Crumpled newspaper, a sheet of Saturday's paper, read twice, now demoted. Kindling wood, split thin, crossed. Small coals on top, chosen by feel, the smooth, heavy ones the size of eggs. A match, The paper catches with a soft breath. The light jumps up orange, and for a moment the whole kitchen exists. The deal table scrubbed pale as bone, the dresser with its cups hanging in a row, the rag rug, the airing lines strung under the ceiling, the tin on the mantel shelf with the goose grease and camphor in it that your mother swears by, and every child in this house dreads. Ernest watches the flames with the frank astonishment of a person 3 months old, to whom fire is brand new information. "That's the fire," you tell him quietly. "You'll get used to it." Welcome to Asham Street, Kentish Town, in the north of London. A street of flat-fronted brick terraces about 20 years old, 2 stories and a scullery, 6 rooms if you count generously, with a strip of yard behind and a railway somewhere always in your ears. Welcome to Monday, the 6th of March. No, you correct yourself even in your own head, because dates matter in this house. They are written in a book. Monday, the 2nd of March, 1885. Wash Day. God help us all. Your name is Edith Hobbs. You are 14 years old, and you are the eldest of 8. Say it again, slowly, because the whole of this story lives inside that sentence. 8 children. Edith, 14, Tom, 12, Fanny, 10, Walter, 8, Alice, 6, George, 4, May, who is 2, and Ernest, here on your hip, born a week before Christmas, currently drooling on your shoulder with an air of accomplishment. 8 children, 2 parents, 10 people, 14 feet wide. Your father is Frederick Hobbs, a goods clerk with the Midland Railway at St Pancras, which means he goes out every morning in a black coat and a clean white collar, and spends his day turning wagon loads of Burton beer and Leicester boots and Derbyshire coal into neat blue-black figures in enormous ledgers. He earns near enough £150 a year. Remember that number, £150. It is the exact size of the box this family lives inside. It works out at about £2 17 a week, and your mother can tell you, without looking up, where every single penny of it goes, because she is the one who makes it go there. Your mother is Louisa Hobbs, and she is 36, and if you asked the census man what she does, he would write wife, and consider the matter closed. The census man has never watched her run this house. The census man wouldn't last a Monday. And you? You are the eldest daughter of a family of 10, which is a job. Nobody calls it one. It has no wages, no hours, no name. The neighbours, when they see you with a baby on your hip and a shopping basket on your arm and 2 children hanging off your skirt, say, "She's a little mother, that one." And they mean it kindly, and they are precisely correct. You finished school last summer, passed your standards, and came home to the other school, the one that never lets out. You are the second pair of hands. You are the second mother. In a house of 10, the second mother is not a luxury. She is load-bearing. The fire is drawing now, snapping at the wood, and the kettle goes on. The big iron kettle, heavy as a cat, its handle wrapped in a twist of rag because the handle gets hot enough to brand you. First kettle for tea and shaving water. The copper in the scullery will want lighting in half an hour because it is Monday, and Monday is the copper's day, but the range comes first. There is an order to everything. The order is the house. Now listen. Above your head, the house is starting to move, and I want you to understand what the geography of it is, because the sleeping arrangements of an ordinary big family are a piece of engineering nobody ever wrote down, because everybody knew it. 6 rooms, front parlour and kitchen downstairs, with the scullery and a lean-to behind the kitchen. Upstairs, the front bedroom and the back bedroom, and above the scullery a little third room, a box of a room, cold in winter, hot in summer, that the landlord's agent optimistically calls a bedroom and your family calls the boys' room. The front bedroom belongs to your parents and to Ernest, in the wooden cradle that has held every baby this family has ever had, its rockers worn flat on one side, and to May, who is 2, and sleeps in a cot jammed between the bed and the window, because a 2-year-old cannot yet be trusted loose among other children in the dark. 4 people in the front bedroom. The back bedroom is the girls' room. 1 iron bedstead, full size, in which sleep you, Fanny, and Alice. You and Fanny top, Alice tucked in from the other end. Top and tail, feet to faces, an arrangement as old as beds. Everyone in England below a certain income sleeps like this and thinks nothing of it. Privacy is not a thing this house contains. There is no drawer of this house where privacy is kept. What the house has instead is warmth, and in January you are glad of every sister in that bed, even Alice, who dreams vigorously and kicks like a pit pony. 3 in the back room. George, being 4, sleeps there too for now, in a little truckle bed that slides under the big bed by day. 4 in the back room, and the boys' room over the scullery holds Tom and Walter in one narrow bed, head to foot, under a window that rattles when the goods trains go down to St. Pancras in the night, which is always. 2 in the boys' room, 4, 4, and 2. 10 sleepers, 3 rooms, 1 privy in the yard, and a china chamber pot under every bed, because nobody goes down to the yard at 2 o'clock on a February night. That is the arithmetic of sleep, and your mother did it the way she does all her arithmetic, quietly years ago, and correctly. When Ernest leaves the cradle, May will come into the girl's bed and Alice will shift up. When Tom starts work and starts growing in earnest, Walter will get more of that narrow bed by the inch. Like a tide, the house does not expand. The house is 14 feet wide. Only the arrangement moves and your mother moves it. And when I say the house is full, I need you to understand what that means in 1885. This is not modern full, where a family of 4 feels crowded because they share a bathroom. There is no bathroom. This is 10 human bodies in 6 rooms, full. It means you have heard every person in this house cough, dream, cry, and pray. It means the stairs have a map. 3rd step creaks on the left. 6th step creaks everywhere. Skip the 6th step entirely if you're carrying a sleeping child, and every person over the age of 5 knows that map in the dark. It means nothing in this house is yours. The bed is a third yours. The comb is communal. The bath water on Saturday nights is generational. And it works. That is the thing nobody tells you about a family of 10, and it is the whole story I am telling you tonight. It works because somebody makes it work, hour by hour, kettle by kettle, penny by penny. Feet hit the floor above you. 2 sets, then a third, then the unmistakable double thump of Walter, who has never once in his life climbed out of a bed when he could fall out of it and call it climbing. A muffled protest from Tom. Your mother's voice, low, through the wall. A word, no more, and the protest stops. The 6th stair creaks. That will be your father, who built half the map of the stairs and ignores it, coming down for his shaving water. You look at the kettle. It is starting its first small private sound, the one before the singing, the one only you are awake enough to hear. Ernest has gone heavy on your shoulder, asleep again, the absolute nerve of him, sleeping now that everyone else has to wake. You carry him into the parlour, coldest room in the house, kept beautiful and empty like a chapel. You'll see it properly on Sunday. and lay him in the perambulator that stands there under a dust sheet, and tuck the blanket to his chin, and stand for 1 second, one only, in the dark among the shrouded furniture, listening to the house come alive over your head like weather. 10 people, 6 rooms, 14 feet, and this is the easy part of the day. Breakfast in a family of 10 is not a meal. It is a distribution. By 6:30, the kitchen has stopped being a room and become a machine. The fire is roaring in the range. The kettle is on its second filling. Your mother is downstairs now, hair pinned, sleeves rolled, moving through the kitchen the way a captain moves through a ship. A touch here, a glance there, nothing wasted. She slept, at your best guess, 5.5 hours, in pieces, between Ernest's opinions. You will never once, in the whole year I am going to show you, hear her mention this. The loaf comes out of the crock. Watch it. Because this loaf is the foundation of everything. A quartern loaf, £4 and a bit of it, costing 5p halfpenny at the baker in Malden Road, and this family gets through 14 or 15 of them a week. Bread is not the accompaniment to the meal. Bread is the meal. The stuff that goes on the bread is the vocabulary. Bread is the grammar. Your mother cuts, and you spread, and what you spread is dripping. Beef dripping saved from the Sunday joint and every roast before it, kept in a basin on the cold shelf in the scullery, pale gold on top, and underneath, if you dig, and the children always dig, the dark jellied layer at the bottom, brown and salt and tasting of the meat itself. Dripping on bread with a shake of salt is what an ordinary London child in 1885 runs on. Butter exists. Butter is 1 and 2p a pound. Butter, in this house, is for Sundays and for your father. This is not meanness. This is the arithmetic, and everyone at this table above the age of 6 can recite it. Because here is the golden rule of the whole household, the rule that sounds cruel for exactly 1 second until you understand it, and then you never question it again. Father eats best. There is 1 rasher of bacon in this house this morning, and it goes on your father's plate, and an egg beside it, and nobody at the table considers this remarkable, least of all your mother, who put it there. And when I say father eats best, I need you to understand what that means in a family like this. It is not a privilege. It is maintenance. The whole engine, rent, coals, bread, boots, school pence, everything runs off 1 salary, and that salary runs off 1 man staying healthy, presentable, and employed. Your father is the boiler of this establishment. You stoke the boiler first. Every working family in England does the sums the same way. From the docks to the counting houses, the wage earner gets the meat, because the meat is not for him, it is for the wage. If father goes under, there is no second boiler. There is the pawn shop, and then the parish, and this family lives its entire life at a carefully maintained distance from those 2 words. So the bacon crackles in the pan, and 8 children eat bread and dripping and count themselves, correctly by the standards of this street, well fed. Tea for everyone. The grown-ups brewed strong, the children's mostly milk and hot water with a stain of tea in it, and sugar if the sugar is holding out. Porridge when the mornings are cold, made in the black pot, stirred with a wooden spoon that has stirred porridge since before you were born and is worn to a slant on one side like an old man's heel. Your father comes down at 25 to 7, shaved, brushed and buttoned, and the first thing he does, every morning without fail, before he sits, is stand at the small looking-glass by the door and put on his collar. Give that collar a moment. It is white. It is starched to the hardness of china. It fastens with a stud front and back, and it is the single most important garment this family owns. Your father is a clerk. What separates a clerk from a porter is not muscle, and heaven knows it is not always money. There are porters and engine drivers on this very street who take home within a few shillings of your father. What separates them is the collar and the black coat, and the fact that his hands are clean at the end of the day. Your father's collar says, office, not yard, salary, not wage, ink, not oil. London reads a man's neck before it reads his face. 2 clean collars a week, boiled, starched and ironed in this very kitchen, and a spare kept always, in the left-hand corner of the dresser drawer, wrapped in tissue paper against the unforeseen. Your mother maintains that spare collar the way the Navy maintains a lifeboat. In 9 years it has been needed twice. It will be needed again before this story's over, and you may as well remember where it lives. He sits. He eats the rasher and the egg without hurry. Hurry's bad for the digestion and worse for the dignity. And he reads yesterday evening's paper folded into a neat quarter, and around him the morning roars. Fanny testing Walter on his spellings, Walter getting them wrong on purpose to make Alice laugh, George underneath the table for reasons that seem sufficient to George, May banging her spoon in the high chair with the steady rhythm of a person paid by the hour. Your father reads through it the way a lighthouse stands in weather. Then he looks over the top of the paper, finds Tom, and says the thing he says most mornings. Standards tonight, Tom. Bring your sums to me after tea. We'll see if the school board is getting its money's worth. Yes, father. Because there is money in it, you see. School is not free. Every Monday morning your mother counts out the school pence onto the dresser. 2p a week for Tom. 2p for Fanny. 2p for Walter. 2p for Alice. 8p a week, invested in the 4 heads currently arguing over the last crust, and your father tracks that investment like the clerk he is. Since 1870 there has been a board school within walking distance of nearly every child in London, and since 1880 the law says they must go, and behind the law walks a man in a dark coat called the attendance officer, and I promise you we will meet him. At 7 o'clock precisely, you could set the church clock by it, and frankly the church clock could set itself by him. Your father rises, puts on his coat, takes his hat from the 3rd peg, and kisses your mother. Then he performs the pocket ritual. Watch, pocketbook, pipe, the twist of paper with his midday bread and cheese in it. 2p for the paper and his tea. He does not take an omnibus. St. Pancras is 25 minutes walk, and 25 minutes walk in each direction is a shilling a week, saved over any conveyance, and a shilling a week is £2.12 a year, and £2.12 a year is a full month's rent. That is how this household thinks. Every convenience is translated instantly into its true currency, which is rent. Wash day, he says at the door, not a question, sniffing the air like a general on the morning of battle. He puts his head back into the kitchen. Edie, mind your mother doesn't lift the wet baskets. I always mind it. I know you do. A half-smile under the moustache, and the door closes, and through the front window you watch the black coat and the tall hat go down Asham Street between all the other black coats and tall hats, the whole clerkly tide of Kentish town flowing south towards the great stations, and your mother is already rolling her sleeves higher. Because now the day actually starts. Now, the ledger. Before we light the copper, I have to show you the ledger, because tonight you cannot understand a single thing this family does unless you can see the page your mother sees when she closes her eyes. It lives on the dresser shelf next to the tea caddy. a black oilcloth-covered account book, sixpence from the stationer, its corners soft as cloth from handling. On its pages, in your mother's small upright hand, is the entire architecture of survival. Rent, 12 shillings a week for the 6 rooms, paid to the agent's man who calls every Monday afternoon, and the rent book stamped, and that rent book is as sacred as the collar, because a clean rent book is a family's character in writing. Bread, 7 shillings. Meat, 7 or 8. Milk, a quart a day plus the babies, say 3 and 6. Butter, cheese, dripping, eggs when the eggs are cheap, tea, sugar, oatmeal, potatoes, greens, coals, 2 shillings a week averaged across the year, more in winter, the coal cellar under the pavement filled a half-ton at a time when the price dips in summer, because your mother buys coal the way the merchants on Mark Lane buy wheat, watching the market, gas for the 2 downstairs lights, oil for the lamps, school pence, 8p, boot club, 6p. We will come to the boot club. Boots are a campaign. Burial insurance, a penny a week ahead with the prudential man who calls Friday evenings. And no, we're not going to dwell on why every family on this street insures its children's lives for 30 shillings, but they do, all of them, and the penny is never, ever missed. Clothing club at the draper's, chapel of a Sunday, a penny each in the plate for as many as go. Father's tobacco, 6p entered without comment. And at the bottom of the week, if the week has behaved, a line your mother writes with particular care. To savings bank, 1 shilling, sometimes 2. The post office savings bank book sleeps under your parents' mattress and contains, after 15 years of marriage, a little over £19, which is to say, 3 months of the world going wrong. £2 17 inches, £2 15 or 16 out, week after week after week, and the difference between those numbers is the whole difference between this family and fear. Your mother does the sums on Friday nights at the kitchen table, lips moving, pencil ticking, and you sit across from her and check the additions because you are always quick at figures, quicker than Tom, though nobody says that in front of Tom. And this too is part of the little mother's job. You're 14 and you know the price of everything your body weight in this city. You could not buy a hair ribbon without mentally converting it into loaves. That is the arithmetic. Hold it in your hands. Feel how little it weighs and how much. And now it is 7:30 on Monday morning, and the copper is waiting, and I am sorry, but it is time. Monday is wash day, and wash day is not a chore. Wash day is an occupation of the house by main force. It commands the building the way a siege commands a city. Every room, every hand, every hour, and dinner is cold because the fire belongs to the wash. It began in truth last night, Sunday evening after chapel, when you and your mother sorted the week's linen in the scullery. 10 people's worth. Sheets, turned top to bottom weekly, sides to middle when they wear. Nothing in this house dies while it can still be sewn into something else. Shirts, and the collars, and cuffs that take the starch. Pinafores, petticoats, stockings, the boys' moleskins, May's everything, and Ernest's napkins, which are their own department of state, soaking in their own lidded pail. And we shall say no more about it except that there are a great many of them, and there always will be. The whites went into the big tub last night to soak in soda water, because a night's soak is an hour's scrubbing saved, and your mother trades in saved hours the way other people trade in shares. At 7:30 you light the copper. It is a great iron basin the size of a hip bath, set in brick in the corner of the scullery, with a fire hole under it and a wooden lid on top, and it holds 20 gallons. You lay its fire with the cheap small coal, and the driftage of the week, and while it heats you and your mother carry water, bucket by bucket from the one tap, 14 buckets, your palms taking the wire handles bite in the same 2 creases every Monday, and the scullery window weeps with steam before 8 o'clock, and the smell of wash day takes the house. And the smell of wash day is this: wet stone, coal smoke, hot soda, and soap. The soap is a bar of sunlight. New stuff, sold wrapped, and the wrapper says it will save your clothes and your strength. And your mother, who believes advertisements the way she believes fortune tellers, admits with reluctance that it is decent soap, and shaves it into the water with a knife. Then the linen goes in, and then the real work starts, and the real work is this, for hour upon hour, possing and scrubbing. You stand at the tub with the dolly, a stool-legged wooden plunger tall as a churn, and you drive it and twist it, until your shoulders burn and the water sucks and thumps like a mill. Collars and cuffs get the washboard, knuckles to the ridged zinc, and by 10 o'clock your hands are scalded pink and swollen soft, and the soda has found every cut you forgot you had, and stings you into remembering. Fanny and Walter went to school at 10 to 9, taking Alice between them, each with their 2pence tied in a handkerchief corner. Tom went ahead, because Tom is 12, and it is beneath him to be seen convoying infants. George and May are penned in the kitchen with the fireguard latched and strict instructions, which May, being 2, receives with the solemn nod of a person who has already decided to climb the coal scuttle. Every few minutes you or your mother puts a head round the kitchen door. The fireguard in this house is bolted to the wall, and the children have never once been left alone with an open fire, because your mother has read the inquest in the paper, and a family that runs on order does not gamble its children against a spark. Ernest sleeps through the morning in the perambulator in the passage. Lulled, genuinely this works, by the thump and slosh of the dolly, which to a baby 3 months old is simply the sound the world makes, and you wring and rinse and wring and blue the whites with the little muslin bag of Reckitt's blue, one careful swirl, because blue makes white whiter, and too much blue makes white a tragedy. And then the mangling. The Hobbses do not own a mangle. A mangle is £2 or £3, which is 5 weeks' rent, which is not a sentence that requires finishing. But 2 doors down at number 11 lives Mrs. Dawes, widow of a master carpenter, 60-some years old, 4 grown children scattered from Holloway to Australia, and Mrs. Dawes owns a mangle the size of an altar, great wooden rollers, an iron flywheel, a handle that takes your whole back to turn, and she rents the use of it at a penny a basket load, and on Mondays her scullery is the parliament of the street. You carry the wet baskets down, you, not your mother, you promised, with the wicker handles gouging your forearms and the load steaming in the March air, and you take your turn among the aprons and the steam, and you feed the sheets in flat while Mrs. Dawes herself turns the wheel, because she trusts nobody else's fingers near her rollers, and she has strong views on fingers. Feed it straight, girl, straight. A sheet fed crooked is a sheet ironed twice. And then the same words every single Monday of your life, as certain as the church bell. First one up, last one down, and nobody thanks the mangle. That's a woman's week, Edith Hobbs. Mind you marry a man who knows it. You have known Mrs. Dawes since before you could walk. She has an opinion on every marriage on this street. 2 lodgers to keep her respectable, a black cat called Bismarck, and a kettle that is never off. Remember her. On a street like this, a woman like Mrs. Dawes is not a neighbour. She is infrastructure. By 1 o'clock the yard lines at home are full and the wash hangs out in the raw March air, sheets cracking like sails, your father's shirts pegged by the tails, the whole street's Monday flying in parallel yards as far as the railway wall, a fleet of respectability under a sky the colour of pewter. What won't dry out, and in a London March, that is most of it, comes in by evening to the wooden clothes horse, the airing horse, which stands its eternal guard around the kitchen fire, so that from October to May this family essentially lives inside its own laundry, ducking under damp hems to reach the teapot, and the smell of drying linen is the smell of home so deeply that 40 years from now, catching it somewhere, you will stop dead in the street. Dinner on wash day is cold, and nobody complains, because it is cold on every wash day on every street in England. Cold mutton left over from Sunday, bread, and the pickled cabbage your mother puts up in the autumn. And here, while you eat it standing up, you always eat standing up on Mondays. There is no version of Monday in which you sit. Let me show you the week's food whole, because it is a masterpiece. And like most masterpieces produced by women in this century, it is anonymous. It pivots on the joint. On Saturday night your mother buys the Sunday joint, say a shoulder of mutton, 7 pounds weight at around 8p the pound, 4 shillings and 8p, the single largest food purchase of the week, chosen at the butcher's with the concentration of a jeweller grading stones. Sunday it is roasted and eaten hot, with potatoes under it in the dripping pan catching everything it lets fall, and Sunday dinner is the one meal of the week at which all 10 of you sit down together, and the one at which there is meat for every plate, carved by your father in strict order, himself, Tom, a working appetite in training, then down the ages to May, who receives a morsel the size of a stamp and is entirely satisfied. Monday the joint comes again, cold with the wash. Tuesday what is left is minced and resurrected as hash, or shepherd's pie under a roof of mashed potato, and by Tuesday the joint is no longer meat, so much as a rumour of meat, a flavour circulating among potatoes. And this is the exact truth of the phrase your children's children will still be saying when they cannot remember why, making it stretch. Wednesday the bone itself goes into the pot with pearl barley, carrots, onions, and becomes broth. And Thursday the broth, thickened, feeds them all again. And by Thursday night that one shoulder of mutton has put something of itself into 5 days of dinners for 10 people. And the bone, boiled hollow, is finally sold. Yes, sold, with the rags and the drip and skim, to the rag-and-bone man whose cry comes down Asham Street on Friday mornings, and the halfpence goes into the ledger. In this house, even the exhaust of the engine is fuel. Friday is fish, herrings, 2 a penny, or bloaters, grilled over the fire on the long fork, and the smell of them is Friday the way soda is Monday. Saturday is sausages, or faggots, or whatever the week's last shilling say it is. And Saturday night you and your mother go to market, and of all the hours of the week, this is secretly the one you love. Because Saturday night in Kentish Town is a carnival with arithmetic. The shops along the High Street and Queen's Crescent blaze with gas jets and naphtha flares. The stalls come out. The butchers stand on their blocks at 9, 10 o'clock at night, auctioning off what must not keep till Monday. Buy, buy, buy. Lovely leg o' mutton, who says 3 and 9, 3 and 6 then. I'm robbing myself. And the whole neighbourhood is out with its baskets, wives and daughters mostly. Shawled, sharp-eyed, moving stall to stall in the hissing white light, with the week's remaining money held in the fist like a hand of cards. Your mother plays that hand like a professional. She feels every cabbage. She holds eggs to the flare. She waits. This is the art. She waits until the right moment of the night to buy the joint, late enough for the price to drop, early enough that the best is not gone, and she has never once in your memory misjudged it. You carry the basket. The basket by the end weighs like a christening, oranges if the oranges are cheap, a screw of sweets, one, to be divided at home among 8 children with the precision of a treaty, and walking home up the dark of Asham Street with the naphtha smell in your shawl, and the basket handle sawing your fingers numb, your mother says the thing she says perhaps twice a year. Her version of an embrace. You're a good help to me, Edie. I don't know how I should manage. She would manage. You know it. She knows it. But you carry the sentence home anyway. Warmer than the shawl. Tuesday, while we're accounting for the week. Ironing. The linen from Monday, damped and rolled, meets the flat irons. 3 of them, in rotation, heating on the range trivet, tested with a licked fingertip and a hiss, and woe betide the iron that meets a collar 1 degree too hot, because a scorched collar is not a collar, it is a catastrophe with a buttonhole. You iron the small things. Your mother irons your father's shirts herself, the way an armourer sees to the breastplate personally. Wednesday is bedrooms and mending. Thursday is the black leading of the range, filthiest job of the week. The black lead worked in with brushes until the iron shines like a beetle, your hands grey to the wrist, and the whitening of the front doorstep, on your knees with the hearthstone because the doorstep is the street's report card, and on this street it is red. And through all of it, around all of it, under all of it, the children. Bex, here is what nobody tells you about a family of 10, and what you would tell them if anybody ever asked the 14-year-old, which nobody does. The work of the house is not the work. The work is the children. The house merely takes hours. The children take everything else. School swallows the middle 4 from 9 till 4:30. God bless the London School Board and every brick of its buildings. The school is 10 minutes away, a tall 3-decker of red brick and white stone standing over the terraces like a battleship among rowing boats. Infants on the ground floor, girls above, boys above that. 1,000 children marshalled twice daily by bells and whistles. Tom is in Standard 5 and could pass Standard 6 if he chose, which is precisely the argument currently running at low temperature between Tom and your father. Hold that thought. It will be a year in the resolving. Fanny is in Standard 4 and is, by the private admission of her teacher to your mother on the pavement one afternoon, the best needle and best hand at composition in her class, and Fanny has a secret ambition, which she has told nobody but you, at night, in the bed, in the smallest voice. She wants to stay on, to be a monitor, then a pupil teacher, to be one day, she can hardly say it, Miss Hobbs, with a register of her own. Walter is in Standard 2, where his handwriting looks like a spider's funeral, and his mental arithmetic, infuriatingly, is the quickest in the room, because Walter will do anything fast that can be done fast and nothing at all that must be done slowly. And Alice sits in the big infants class chanting her tables, a dreamy child who is 6 years old and lives principally inside her own head, in a country nobody else has visited, from which she occasionally reports. Attendance is the law, and the law has a face. His name on this beat is Mr. Prosser, and he is the school board visitor, the attendance officer, a grey-whiskered man with a notebook and a knock every mother on this street can identify through 2 closed doors. When a child's absences pass what the logbook will bear, Mr. Prosser calls, and he leaves, if he's not satisfied, a printed yellow notice that summons a father to explain himself before the divisional committee, and from there the road can run, in the worst houses to the magistrate and a fine. You have seen the yellow paper twice in your life, both times pushed under other people's doors, and both times the street discussed it in the tone reserved for fever. In this house, Mr. Prosser has never left anything but a good morning. Your father's collar and your mother's doorstep have seen to that. But you know his knock. Everyone knows his knock. File it away with a spare collar in its tissue paper. Winter is coming, and so is he. The little ones, George, May, Ernest, are yours and your mother's all day, divided between you by a wordless daily treaty. George at 4 is a machine for questions. Why is the fire orange? Why has the milkman got a horse and we haven't? Where does the water go when it goes down the drain, and can you get there? He follows you privy to parlour all day long, and twice a day he vanishes. Total ringing silence, the most frightening sound a house can make, and is found so far in the coal cellar twice, under the parlour dust sheets once, and once, magnificently, in Mrs. Dawes's scullery, eaten her lodger's kipper, having offered in exchange for it one dead woodlouse, and his considered opinion of Bismarck the cat. May at 2 is at the stage of naming the world at the top of her voice, and what she cannot name she calls dat, and she rules the kitchen from the high chair like a small red-faced queen, and the entire family, including your father, including Tom, who would die before admitting it, is her abject court. And Ernest at 3 months has just discovered his own hands, holding them up before his face and turning them in the light with the expression of a man reading a marvellous letter. And you, who have seen 5 babies do exactly this, stop what you're doing and watch him do it anyway. That an ordinary week. Say it runs from Monday's copper to Saturday's naphtha flares, and Sunday's roast. 7 days, perhaps 105 hours of waking labour between the two of you, your mother and you, the woman and the girl, and not 1 hour of it on any wage book in the Empire. The Empire runs on coal, and it runs on this, and it writes songs about the coal. But an ordinary week is not why you are here. You are here for the year, and the year is about to have its first opinion. First, though, Sunday. Because you cannot understand this family or this street or this entire class of England until you have stood in the parlour on a Sunday. The parlour is the front room, and it is the best room, and it is used, truly used, 1 day in 7. The other 6 days it stands behind its closed door in curtained dusk, cold as a larder, keeping its treasures like a chapel keeps relics. The horsehair sofa that bites the backs of your legs through your stockings, the round table with the wool cloth and the family Bible on it, births and deaths on the fly-leaf in 3 generations of handwriting, the framed engraving of the Queen, the wax fruit under its glass dome, the 2 china dogs on the mantelpiece gazing at each other across the clock with a devotion undimmed by 20 years, and your grandmother's teapot used 4 times a year, mourned in advance. Children enter the parlour on Sundays washed and on the great occasions of life. That is all. Is it a waste? A whole room standing empty in a house of 10? Ask your mother, and she will look at you as if you had proposed selling the Queen. The parlour is not a room. The parlour is the proof. Proof that this family is not sinking, has never sunk, will not sink. 1 room, at least, that necessity cannot touch. Every family on Asham Street keeps this same cold room like a flag flying, and the poorer the family, the more fiercely the flag is kept. Sunday morning is church, St. Luke's 10 minutes away, a tall brick church not 20 years old, where the Hobbses fill most of a pew in a rustling row, scrubbed and darned and brushed, and your father wears his Sunday coat and his silk hat, and Walter endures the sermon like a prisoner of war, and Alice, staring at the east window, is visibly somewhere else entirely, possibly Sinai. Sunday afternoon, after the roast, the parlour is opened. The fire is lit there, the week's one parlour fire, and the family sits in it, on its best behaviour, in its best clothes, and does Sunday things. The Bible, the one album of photographs, a card game called Happy Families if your father is feeling loose, and your father takes the baby and walks the length of the room with him, showing him the china dogs, the queen, the wax fruit, introducing him formally to the family estate. And in June, here is the year's first great event, and you must picture the street to understand it. The piano comes. It comes on a Thursday, on a van, wrapped in green baize like a prize fighter, and it takes 3 men and a system of planks to get it up the steps, through the passage. A fraction of an inch to spare at the door frame, the whole family holding its breath as one lung. And into the parlour, against the inner wall, where a marble-topped chiffonier has given up its place in the manner of a bishop yielding to a king. A cottage piano, walnut case, brass candle sconces, made by the 10,000 in workshops across North London, and sold, this is the miracle, this is the whole story, on the hire system. 5 shillings a month, 36 months. Your father signed the agreement at the shop on the high street with the solemnity of a man signing a treaty, and the paper lives now in the writing desk, and the 5 shillings has its own line in your mother's ledger, and some months, mark this because the year will test it, some months that line is the last thing standing between the week's 2 columns. Understand what a piano is on a street like this in 1885. It is not an instrument. It is an altitude. It says this family has 5 shillings a month that hunger cannot reach. The doorstep says clean. The collar says clerk. The piano says arrived. Half the parlours on Asham Street have one now, on the same hire system, and on summer evenings with the windows open, the street performs itself to itself. A dozen pianos through a dozen sashes, hymns and waltzes and scales, 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 climbing and stumbling and climbing again, the sound of a whole class of England pulling itself upward by the fingers. In this house, the fingers are most yours. You had lessons for 2 years, 9pence each, from a Miss Finch by the church, until the arithmetic ate the lessons. You can play the hymns everybody knows, and you can play, with the soft pedal down, feeling your way like a woman crossing a stream on stones. The one piece of sheet music the family owns beyond the hymnal, which came bundled with the piano itself. But the piece your mother actually loves is one you do not own. She heard it years ago, before you were born, sung at a shop concert given by the Midlands Clerks. The Lost Chord by Mr. Arthur Sullivan. The great song of the age. The one about the organist, and the one perfect chord found once and never found again. Sheet music costs money, the ledger knows no line for it, and your mother is not a woman who mentions wants. She mentioned this one once, drying her hands, not looking at anyone. They had the Lost Chord at the Clark's concert. I always thought that was the loveliest thing I ever heard. And your father, behind his paper, said nothing at all. But you saw the paper stop moving, remember that too. Put it in the drawer with the spare collar and Mr. Prosser's knock. This story is loading its shelves. Saturday night, let us do it now, in June, when the kitchen is warm and the ordeal is at its gentlest, is bath night. 1 tin bath, taken down from its nail in the yard, set on the rag rug before the kitchen fire. The copper heats the water. You and Tom carry it in relays, the bucket handles biting the same old creases. and then the family of 10 is washed, in one kitchen, in one evening, in strict order of age, youngest first. That is the system, and its logic is the logic of everything here. The water starts clean and warm for the tenderest skin, and each bather after inherits the estate of all before, freshened from the kettle, greyer by degrees, until the water at the end has done duty 10 times over and is carried out by the bucket to the drain, having earned its rest as honestly as anyone in the house. Ernest first, in the basin, kicking. Then May, briefly, loudly. Then George, and George, this June, is 4, and George is afraid of the bath, not the water, the emptying. He heard the great glugging suck of the drain once and reasoned. You can follow every step, it is good reasoning. That is the terrible thing about George, that what happens to the water when the plug goes could happen to a boy. He goes in rigid, is scrubbed at speed and exits like a salmon. Your mother does not mock him and does not indulge him. She has bathed 5 children before this one. She tells him only, every week in the same flat certain voice, "You are bigger than the drain, George Hobbs. It will take until winter to work. Everything with children takes until some season or other. That is what seasons are for." Then Alice, dreaming in the steam until chivied. Then Walter, who regards dirt as a personal achievement and its removal as confiscation. Then Fanny. Then you. By your turn the kitchen is tropical, the window blind, the fire banked, and you sit in the grey warm water that is the family's own Gulf Stream, knees to chin, hair down, for the 4 minutes of the week in which nobody may ask you for anything. Silence, heat, the fire's breath on your wet shoulders. There are grander luxuries in England tonight. There are none more thoroughly earned. Then Tom, alone, guarded by a shut door and fierce adolescent protocol. Your parents bathe later, after the children are up, by arrangements into which the narrative does not inquire. 10 people clean, 1 fire, 1 copper, perhaps 30 gallons all told, and every gallon carried twice. When you hear that word, bathroom, in the century ahead, when pipes bring the hot water up through the walls of ordinary houses like a magic trick, I want you to remember what Saturday night weighed and who carried it. One more picture from that summer, a small one, but you will want it later. A Thursday in July. Your father, in the flurry of a late start, leaves his dinner behind him on the dresser. The twist of paper, bread and cheese and the cold sausage end. And your mother looks at it, and looks at you, and at 12:30 you're walking down through Camden Town with it, and the baby left with Mrs. Dawes, and this is how you come to see, for the first time in your life, the inside of the place where the money comes from, St. Pancras. You've lived your whole life inside the sound of it and never once been through the doors. The hotel front rears over the Euston Road like a red cathedral that has swallowed a railway. Pinnacles, spires, a clock tower with gold in it, brick the colour of a wound, and behind it the great train shed throws one single arch of iron and glass across every platform at once. 240 feet across, 100 feet high at the crown, the widest span ever thrown when they raised it in 1868, 17 years ago. And under it the light comes down blue-grey and enormous, like weather indoors, and the engines stand hissing in it like kept beasts. And down below, at the goods offices where your errand takes you, because the passengers ride above, the station floor is held up on a forest of iron columns spaced to the width of a beer barrel, and in the undercroft the Burton beer stands in ranks by the 1,000 cask. There, at a high desk among 20 high desks, in a brown holland coat over his black, stands your father, pen behind his ear, entering wagon numbers in a ledger the size of a paving stone. He's surprised and covers it, introduces you to the man at the next desk, my eldest. With a particular flatness of voice you suddenly understand is pride wearing its work clothes, and he walks you back out through the beer-smelling dark between the columns, his hand on your shoulder, and shows you the shed roof from below, and says the day's one sentence about it. Widest in the world when I was a young man. They clerked every rivet of it, Edie. Somebody wrote every one of those in a book. And you look up at the iron sky 100 feet over your head and think, you cannot help it. You're your mother's daughter, of the ledger on the dresser shelf and the 2 columns, and it comes to you quietly, there in the roar and hiss of the greatest station on earth, that your family is not small after all. It is the same thing as this, at a different scale. Somebody writes it all in a book, and that is why it stands. Every family is an empire if the clerking is sound. Yours is clerked to the farthing, and then it is August, and the bank holiday, and the year opens its one great safety valve, and the whole of working London goes up the hill. Hampstead Heath on the August bank holidays where your city goes to breathe, 100,000 strong. The holiday is only 14 years old, an Act of Parliament of 1871, one man's law, and it has already grown this. And the Hobbs family goes as it always goes, on foot, all 10, up through Gospel Oak with the crowds thickening around you like a river gathering tributaries. Your father carrying George on his shoulders, you and Tom taking the perambulator between you over the rough ground, kettle and cups and a basket of bread and dripping and hard-boiled eggs, and May riding the pram's end like a figurehead. Donkeys, swing boats, a fife band somewhere, and somewhere else a barrel organ, and coconut shies, and your father, one day a year, takes off his coat in public, rolls his sleeves, pays his penny at the shy, and knocks down 2 coconuts with the terrible unhurried accuracy of a man who was once a boy, and hands them to Walter and Alice without a word, and puts his coat back on, and is a clerk again. And at the top on Parliament Hill, 320 feet over the Thames, London lies down at your feet. All of it. The great grey sea of it, roof upon roof to the edge of eyesight, smoking gently under the summer haze like a field after rain. The dome of St. Paul's riding it all in the south. The crystal glitter of the palace at Sydenham on its far hill. The dock's masts east like a stubble field. And somewhere in the middle of the immensity, unfindable, one particular chimney pot on one particular 14-foot house, that all of this weight of world somehow balances on. 10 of you stand in a row on the grass and look at 5 million people at once. There's St. Pancras, says Tom, finding the clock tower. There's the gasworks, says Walter, finding the gasworks, because Walter would find the gasworks in Venice. And Alice, 6 years old, looks for a long time in silence at the whole boiling, enormous glittering plain of it, and delivers, in the tone of a coroner's verdict, the sentence the family will repeat for the next 40 years. It's very big, and I don't like it as much as our house. Your father laughs, the real laugh, the rare one, up from the waistcoat. And on the walk home, sunburnt, footsore, George asleep on the pram like the fallen at Waterloo, your parents walking behind in a quiet you can hear is a good quiet, your mother says to your father, "Lo!" The words not meant for you but caught anyway, the words that light the fuse of this story's whole last act. Next summer, Fred, if the book allows, I want to take them to something grand. proper exhibition, in a proper place, once, all 10 of us together, while we still are 10 under one roof, they none of them will forget it, and nor shall I. And your father says nothing, but 2 days later there is a new jam jar on the kitchen shelf, up beside the tea caddy where the small children cannot reach, with a paper label pasted on in his ledger hand, outing. And into it, that first night, with a click like a very small vow, goes a single farthing. Watch that jar. It has 11 months and 1 whole winter to survive. Autumn comes to Kentish Town the way a lodger comes down a passage. You hear it before you see it. The mornings go dark at the edges. The airing horse resumes its winter reign around the fire. The coal cellar is filled in September, a full ton this year, 22 shillings, your mother having watched the summer price like a hawk watching a field. And the boot campaign begins. Boots, in a family of 8 children, are not footwear. They are a standing military problem, and your mother wages it on 3 fronts. Front 1, the boot club at the cobbler's, 6pence a week the whole year round, so that new boots, when they must come without shock to the ledger. Front 2, the great autumn redistribution, when every child's feet are measured against every child's boots in a solemn Kitchener size, and the boots march down the family like regimental colours, Tom's to Walter, resoled, Fanny's to Alice, rehealed, Alice's to George, who receives his first real boots with the reverence of a knighthood and clatters on the lino like a dray horse for a fortnight. Front 3, the nightly triage, boots by the fender, your father. This is his, no one else's. With the last and the hammer and the sparable nails, tapping souls back to duty by lamplight. Because a clerk he may be, but his own father mended boots in Bedfordshire, and hands remember. New boots, bought once each autumn for the eldest currently outgrowing everything. This year Tom, 7 and 6 the pair, hold that number against what is coming. And the whole system turns, and no Hobbs child has ever gone to school with wet feet, and your mother would like that noted, wherever such things are noted. School resumes, and with it the low-temperature war. Tom passed Standard 5 in the summer, high marks. His master has said plainly that the boy should stay to Standard 6 and try for a place in an office with prospects. Perhaps in time the railway itself, the clerk's examination, the black coat. Your father, who wears the black coat, wants exactly this. With a want so large he keeps it lying down for fear it stand up and frighten the boy. And Tom at 12.5 wants to be done. Wants wages, wants boots that were never anyone else's. Wants to put money on the kitchen table on a Saturday like the sons of engine drivers do. Wants, above all, to stop being a child in a house where he can see, because he is nobody's fool, exactly what he costs. The argument surfaces perhaps once a month at the tea table, always in the same 3 moves like a chess opening. Tom says Alfred Dawes's grandson earns 8 shillings portering. Father says a porter at 40 earns what a clerk at 40 earns at 25, and the difference is the examination, and the examination is Standard 6. Tom says nothing. Jaw set exactly, like his father's, and your mother pours the tea, and the board is put away till next month. 12 months, I told you. Watch it move. In October the fogs begin. You know the London fog by reputation. Everyone in the world knows it by reputation, but reputation is thin stuff. What comes in from the river on a bad November morning is not weather. It is substance, yellow-grey, tasting of sulphur and cold metal, thick enough that from your front door the lamp-post opposite is a rumour, and the milkman's horse arrives out of nothing head first, like a ship's figurehead out of sea mist. It seeps under the door and lays a grey film on the parlour furniture. It gets us to the wash. A fog-on drying day means the whole white wash redone, and your mother stands at the window measuring the sky like an admiral. It gets into chests, and this is where the year turns on you, because you have been listening for the wrong danger. You've been watching the ledger, and the fog, and the boots. In the last week of November, the schools of London do what they do every winter and start to cough. Measles. The word goes down the street door to door ahead of the sickness itself, the way fire news goes ahead of fire. It is in the infants' class first. It is always the infants. And the school logbook fills with absences, and mothers stand on doorsteps in twos with their arms folded under their shawls. And then on the first Tuesday of December, Alice comes home from school hot-eyed and heavy, saying the light hurts, and your mother puts the back of her hand to Alice's forehead, and stands quite still for a moment, and then becomes, before your eyes, a different and older kind of general. You know measles. Everyone in this England knows measles. It comes through every few years like a tide, and most children ride it, feverish and wretched, and get up again in a fortnight. But you also know, because on this street nothing is secret. The other arithmetic, the one nobody says in front of children, that measles in London kills more little ones than the scarlet fever does, most often by turning in the chest, the cough going down into the lungs, and that 6 years old and winter and fog is not the hand you would choose to play it with. So the house goes on to a war footing, and you see for the first time all year the full reach of what your mother knows. Alice is moved into your parents' room, warmest in the house. Fire kept in the grate day and night now. Hang the coal line in the ledger. The ledger will simply have to bear it. The blind is drawn, and a red flannel petticoat hung across the window besides, dimming the room to a dull rose dusk, because strong light in measles is agony to the eyes, and every mother in England believes the red light itself is medicine. Perhaps it is not. The dimness is. The room is a warm red cave, and Alice lies in the middle of it, flushed scarlet, the rash coming up on the third day behind the ears and spreading like spilt tea, and her breathing getting that small catch in it, that tick, that you hear once and then cannot stop hearing. The tin comes down off the mantel-shelf, goose grease and camphor, rendered and mixed by your mother every Michaelmas, dreaded by every child in the house in the ordinary way of things. And now the ordinary way of things is over, and twice a day your mother warms a spoonful of it by the fire and rubs it into Alice's narrow chest and back, firm, slow circles, and pins the flannel over it, and the smell of camphor takes the upstairs of the house entire, sharp and clean and frightening, the smell of trouble, the smell every person on this street was themselves nursed under and will die knowing. Beef tea, made and strained and spooned, barley water with lemon, the steam kettle by the bed when the cough worsens. May and Ernest are carried down to Mrs. Dawes's by day. As long as it takes, girl. Don't insult me by asking twice. And George is forbidden the sick room and therefore holds vigil outside its door, posting things under it. A marble, a drawing of, he reports through the keyhole, the drain, defeated, half a biscuit, which does not fit, and is eaten in committee by him and the cat. And on the 5th night, the fever spikes. You will keep the shape of that night for the rest of your life, the way floorboards keep a burn. Alice raving soft nonsense in the red dark about her country, the one in her head, her breath going like a small saw. Your mother, who has not properly slept in 3 days, sponging her to the wrists with vinegar water, over and over, steady as a right, and your father, your unhurried father, your 7 o'clock precisely father, coming up the stairs in his shirt sleeves, taking one look and going straight back down, and you hear the front door and his boots in the empty street running. You have never in 14 years heard your father run. The doctor comes near midnight, a stout man in a dressing-gown collar, £0.50 the visit and cheap at 10 times the number, and is quiet over Alice's chest with his wooden stethoscope for a long 2 minutes, the whole house. You can feel it through the floor, standing still around his silence. Then, the chest is not taken. It is the fever's crisis, not the lungs. Keep her cool, keep her steady. The next hours decide it. He has 4 more such doors to knock at before morning. Half the street's children are down with it. At the door he pauses, bag in hand, and looks at your mother, 3 days awake, vinegar to the elbows, and at you behind her with the candle, and delivers, in the flat voice of a tired man saying a true thing, the only medical opinion of this whole year that the family will frame and keep. Half of doctoring is nursing, and the nursing here is as good as any I see in Harley Street. I'd say so in any company. Good night to you. You and your mother sit the rest of it out together, one either side of the bed, the fire ticking, the camphor thick, the candle making its slow, honest progress down itself, and somewhere towards 4 o'clock the sore in Alice's chest gentles, and the terrible bright flush goes greyish, then just pale, and the sweat comes, the good sweat, the breaking sweat, soaking her nightgown and the bolster and half the flannel, and she surfaces for a moment, 6 years old again, eyes her own again, and looks at the two of you, the woman and the girl keeping her shore. I went a long way, she says with dim wonder. You're back now, says your mother. And Alice, entirely satisfied with this, sleeps, real sleep, deep and paid for. And your mother sits back and lets out a breath the length of the whole week, and then does the thing you have never seen her do. Nothing. She simply sits, hands empty in her lap, in the red dark, doing nothing at all, for perhaps 10 minutes. It is the most frightening and the most reassuring thing you have seen all year, both at once. Then she stands, smooths her apron, and says, "The copper will want lighting at 7:30, because it is, of course. It has somehow never stopped being. Monday." Alice mends, slowly, crossly, completely. The fortnight of convalescence in which a recovering child is more work than a sick one, wanting entertainment, wanting company, wanting, loudly, to know why George may not come in yet. And here the house does a thing that tells you everything about it. The parlour rule breaks. By order of your mother, the rule's own author and lifelong enforcer, the parlour fire is lit on weekdays, and Alice is installed on the horsehair sofa like a small dowager under the gaze of the china dogs, wrapped in the good shawl, and the sacred room becomes, for 2 weeks of December, a hospital ward and a playroom, and the walls do not fall, and the queen in her frame appears on the whole to approve. Rooms are for the family, not the other way round. Even here, even this one. The ledger takes the winter full in the chest, and this is your chapter, so stand up straight. Because your mother's 3 days at the bedside were 3 days when somebody else had to be the mother downstairs, and the somebody was you. 14, running the meals, the fires, the little ones, the callers. And when the rent man came on the Monday, it was you who took the rent book to him, and it was you, that Friday at the kitchen table alone, who did the week's sums, because your mother was asleep in a chair at last, and you would have gone at anyone who woke her with the poker. You had watched her do it 200 Fridays. Now the pencil was in your hand. Doctor, half a crown, extra coals, beef tea and lemons, the columns brought down honest, and the bottom line telling you before you told anyone else, that this week, for the first time all year, the money going out had met the money coming in and passed it. And so it was you, when your father came down, who laid the book before him and put your finger on the 2 lines that could yield savings and the 5 shillings piano line which the shop, the agreement said, would suspend a month for a 6-penny fee. And your father looked at the page and then at you for a long moment, over the top of his spectacles, exactly the way he looks at Tom's sums. Savings, he said. The piano stays current. A suspended agreement is a flag half down, Edie, and the street can see the shop's ledger even if it can't see ours. Which is not, you understand, vanity. It is the same collar, the same doorstep, the same rent book. The family's credit is a wall, and every course of brick in it is load-bearing, and he has just shown you which brick he judges must never come out. 1 shilling was not sent to the post office that week, nor the next. The jam jar on the shelf, you checked, you're ashamed how quickly you checked, was not touched. Some walls are inside the house, and so Christmas comes to a family that has spent its margin and produces, out of almost nothing, nearly everything. The goose is already paid for, of course it is. Your mother joined the Grocers' Goose Club back in July, 6pence a week all autumn, and stood in the queue on the 23rd with her ticket like a woman collecting a dividend. The pudding was made in November, stirred by all 10 in turn for luck. Ernest's fist guided round in your father's grip, and has hung since in its cloth in the scullery, gathering importance. On the eve, the kitchen is a manufactory till midnight. You and Fanny and your mother, mincemeat and sage and onions and the goose trust. And 8 stockings. Tom, who's above stockings this year, hangs his all the same at 10 to midnight, believing himself unobserved. Go up along the mantel shelf on the airing line, and in the morning each one holds, an orange in the toe, a new penny, a handful of nuts and a sugar mouse, and 1 small true present each, chosen by your mother in secret genius over months. For Alice, a paint box. For Walter, a clasp knife. God defend the household. For Fanny, a real teacher's red ink pen. For George, a wooden boat for the bath, which is to say a bribe, and it works, and the drain holds no further terrors. For May, a rag doll with button eyes. For Ernest, a rattle he ignores in favour of its paper. For Tom, a shaving mirror, which is your father's entire commentary, never spoken aloud on the argument, and which Tom, going red, understands perfectly. And for you, in a twist of tissue paper, from your mother's own drawer, her garnet brooch, the one her mother gave her, the one she wore at her wedding. You kept this house on its feet in December, Edith Hobbs. I'll not have it said the house didn't notice. It is the only time in the whole year you cry where people can see you, and nobody teases you, not even Walter, which is how you know they were all told not to. Goose at 2, the parlour ablaze, crackers, the Queen toasted in ginger wine, and in the evening the piano, carols, everyone crowded into the sacred room, Alice restored and bossy on the sofa arm, your father's baritone finding the low line of Adeste Fidelis, the way a keel finds water, and the street outside full of other pianos doing the same through other curtains, the whole of Asham Street singing to itself in parallel like one instrument with 40 rooms. That is Christmas 1885. Hold it. Hold it the way you hold a warm cup in a cold kitchen, because the year has 1 more month and the month is February, and February is bringing something down the calendar towards this family that none of you can see coming, and it is not an illness, and it is not a bill, and it will be over in a single evening. And it is the reason, if we are honest, that a night like tonight, in a house like this, is worth telling at all. Because of how ordinary it was, right up until the night it wasn't. January 1886 comes in hard. Snow before 12th night, and then frost on frost. The water butt frozen to its heart. The one tap dressed in sacking like an invalid. Ferns of ice inside the bedroom windows every morning for the children to melt with their thumbs. The coal, bought so shrewdly in September, burns anyway at winter's own rate, which respects no ledger. Chilblains bloom on 8 sets of knuckles and toes itching like sin, and are rubbed with universal remedy, which is more or less anything warm, and the instruction not to scratch universally disobeyed. And the ponds freeze, Hampstead, Highgate, sheet ice, ringing like a shilling, and half the boys of North London on it. And this is where Walter, 8 years old and built entirely of velocity, meets his hour of destiny and is found wanting. On 2 separate January afternoons, Walter Hobbs does not arrive at his standard 2 classroom. He arrives instead by a route involving a rope swing and 2 other boys who shall remain nameless, because Walter, to his sole credit in this affair, never names them, at the frozen ponds where he slides until dark with the single-minded joy of a dog let off a string and comes home with wet boots and a prepared face and lies. Badly, he's a terrible liar. His ears go red about where he has been. The school logbook does not lie at all, and so, on the last Friday of January, the knock comes. That knock. 2 firm, 1 soft, unmistakable. The knock every mother on this street can identify through 2 closed doors, and you open the door with the baby on your hip, and there he stands. Mr. Prosser, school board visitor, grey whiskers, notebook, 30 years of other people's excuses filed behind his eyes, and, in his hand, already filled out. Your stomach drops the way stomachs drop. The yellow paper. He's not unkind. That's the thing about Mr. Prosser that nobody tells you until he's on your own doorstep. He has seen real truancy, the kind that means a child sent out sweeping crossings or minding barrows for a father's beer money, and he can tell that from frozen ponds at a glance. But the law is even, or it is nothing. The yellow notice goes to the houses with pianos too, that is, if you think about it, the whole point of the yellow notice. Your father attends the divisional committee on the Tuesday evening in his best coat, states the facts without varnish, undertakes that the absence will not recur, caution recorded, no fine. 15 minutes, all told. What happens to Walter is not a beating. What happens to Walter is a fortnight of your father, and it is worse, and Walter would be the first to say so. The yellow paper is not burned. It is propped on the mantel shelf against the tea caddy, face out, where the whole kitchen can read it at every meal, and it stays there a full week. And on the Saturday your father does not thrash Walter. He dresses him warm and walks him, just Walter, alone with father, unheard of, on any other errand a glory, down through the hard, bright cold to the goods depot gates, where the men are, because they are there now, that winter, every morning, a line of men at the gates, and at every yard gate and every works gate in London, quiet men, decent boots gone porous, coats gone green at the seams, waiting on the chance of a day's loading work that 4 times in 5 is not there. Trade has been bad for 2 years, and this winter it is worse. The docks half idle, The building trade's frozen solid with the ground, and the newspapers your father reads have begun using with a fastidious little shiver, a word they will not put down again for 50 years, the unemployed. Your father stands with Walter at a respectful distance and says nothing for a long time. Then he says, "Look at their boots," and after a while, walking home, only this, and I told you every significant person in this story would give you a lesson, and here is your father's, given not to you but through a wall, which is how you receive most things in a family of 10. None of those men is stupid, Walter, and none of them is wicked, and every one of them slid on ponds when he was 8. A place in the world is a rope, son. It is made of little dull strands, school pence, clean collars, being where you said you would be. No one strand looks worth anything, and any one of them can be dropped on any day with no harm done. That day, you're not in trouble for sliding, you're in trouble for thinking the strand didn't matter. The yellow paper comes off the mantel that night, into the range, and nobody ever mentions it again, including for the rest of his long life Walter, who at 60, a foreman with sons of his own, will still cross the street to avoid walking past a queue at a labour exchange, and will never once tell anyone why. Now it is February, and I have to widen the picture just for a moment, one turn of the lens, because the 8th of February 1886 is a real day. You can look it up. It has a name. London called it Black Monday. And this family is about to brush against it the way a rowing boat brushes a steamer's wake, which is to say, at the edge, at second hand, and yet very nearly swamped. Here is what London knows that morning. A meeting is called for the afternoon in Trafalgar Square. A big one, of the unemployed, the men from the gates, thousands of them, with rival committees and rival speakers all wanting to be the voice of that long queue. And London has had meetings all winter and expects nothing much. And it is a Monday, so Asham Street is boiling its copper and minding its own wash. Your father leaves at 7 precisely, as always. And he says, "This matters. Remember it with everything you have." He says at the door, casual as weather, that he will be an hour or so late this evening. He has an errand up the West End after the office. Nobody is to wait tea. An errand up the West End. Your mother's birthday falls on the 12th, on the Friday. You saw the paper stop moving over the lost cord 8 months ago. You are your mother's daughter, and you can add. You say nothing, and you spend that particular Monday with a small warm secret banked under the wash day like a coal, and that is how the 8th of February starts, in this house, with the copper thumping and a secret and snowlight in a yellow-grey sky. What happens in the middle of London that afternoon while your sheets are freezing stiff on the line is this. Perhaps 20,000 men fill Trafalgar Square. The speeches run hot. The committees quarrel over the crowd like heirs over a will. And towards 4 o'clock some thousands of the roughest of it, with every pickpocket and corner man in the capital, folded in among the honest boots, come pouring westward, and the police, through a blunder that will cost the commissioner his post, have massed their reserve in the wrong place entirely, and the West End of the richest city on earth is, for about 2 hours, simply open. Down Pall Mall goes the crowd, past the great clubs, and the clubs' windows go in. Stones first, then anything. Up St. James's Street, along Piccadilly, shop fronts smashed and stripped, carriages stopped, their occupants handed out into the slush, minus watches and earrings, through Mayfair, roaring, and up at last into Oxford Street as the lamps are being lit. where the plate glass of the great drapers goes down pane after pane like ice breaking, until at South Audley Street, and again by Marylebone Lane, small stubborn knots of police finally read the evening correctly, form line, and break it up the old way. By 8 o'clock it is over. Windows all along 2 miles of the grandest streets in the world lie in the snow. The damage will be counted in tens of thousands of pounds. London has not seen its like in 50 years, and will talk of nothing else for a month. And at number 7 Asham Street, none of this is known. What is known at number 7 is only this. Tea comes and goes without father, as arranged. 7 o'clock comes and goes, which is the hour he named, and at about 7:45, boots come running up the street outside, running on a frozen Monday night, and you're at the window before the knock, and it is the eldest Dawes lodger, breathless, evening paper in his fist, sent round by Mrs. Dawes herself the moment she heard the newsboy. Riot in the West End. Clubs stoned. Shops sacked from Piccadilly to Oxford Street. Police and mob. Special editions. And your father, by his own cheerful word this morning, is somewhere up the West End, an hour late, on an errand nobody's supposed to know. I want to show you exactly what your mother does with that, because it is the finest thing in this whole year, and it looks like nothing at all. She reads the paper once, standing by the kitchen lamp. She folds it, sets it on the dresser face down, and says, in a voice with no colour in it whatever, "Windows mostly," it says windows. "Fanny, take May up. Walter, George, bed, and I'll know if there's talking." And the house, which can read her the way she reads the sky, goes. Quietly. Even Walter. Tom stays. Tom is 12. Tom sits by the fire with a poker in absolute silence, being 12 at it. And your mother takes the mending basket and sits and sews. And you watch her make stitches for 1 hour and a half, even small and perfect, and you understand, in the way these things arrive, all at once and forever, that this is what the far side of all those Fridays looks like. Fear, with its collar starched. Courage, in this class of England, is not a cavalry matter. It is a woman hemming a pillow slip at 9:30, while the clock ticks like a dripping tap, deciding second by second, for 90 consecutive minutes, not to frighten her children. And when Ernest wakes and grizzles at the strange stillness of the house, a baby can hear worry whatever anyone tells you. Your mother does the thing you will still be describing to your own grandchildren in another century. She looks up from the hem and says, as if remarking on the weather, "Edie, go and open the parlour and light the lamp and play something. Softly. This house sounds wrong tonight, and I won't have your father come home to a house that sounds wrong." So that is where the piano's year ends up, that 5-shilling line that survived December by one man's stubbornness. Open, lamp-lit, on a Monday night against every law of the parlour, with a girl of 14 playing hymn tunes with the soft pedal down, "Abide with me," twice, and the Sunday school ones Alice calls through the floorboards for, because none of the children are asleep, of course. They are all lying up there in the dark, being held by the sound the way Ernest was once held by the dolly's thump. The piano was bought to say arrive to the street. It turns out its real work, its whole purpose on this earth, discovered tonight, to say home to 10 frightened people in the dark for as long as necessary. At 6 minutes past 10, Tom is on his feet at the first sound. You're counting everything by then. You will remember the time to the minute all your life. The latch. He is all right. Say it first, plainly, the way the kitchen lamp says it as he comes into the light. He is all right. He is white as his own collar. No, his collar is the thing your eyes cannot leave. The immortal collar, the flag of the family, is torn half from its stud and printed with a broad grey hand mark, and his hat is crushed flat on one side where it met a wall, and his coat's left sleeve is split along the seam at the shoulder, and the knuckles of his right hand are barked raw. From a wall, he says, only a wall climbing a railing out of the crush, and you believe him, and choose to forever. He was in the music cellars off Oxford Street. He had, he says, just paid. When the noise came up the street like a tide coming, and the shopman had the shutters half up in a minute, and the glass 2 doors down went like artillery, and for 2 hours your father stood in a dark, shuttered shop with the shopman and 2 other marooned respectable gentlemen, listening to the trampling and the roaring and the crash upon crash, each one nearer than reason said it was, not knowing. This is the part his voice goes strange at, 1 notch quieter and only once, not knowing whether it would stop at glass. Then it passed, the way weather passes, and the streets after it, he says, were the strangest sight of his 50, of his life. Oxford Street ankle deep in broken plate glass glittering under the lamps like a frozen river, shopmen standing in their own windows among the ruins of them, saying nothing, and every step of his 3-mile walk home crunching, until Camden, where the world was suddenly indecently ordinary, pubs alight, a barrel organ going, London not even knowing yet what London had done to itself an hour south, and then standing in the kitchen in his ruined collar with the whole house now openly on the stairs in its night-clothes, because bed had held precisely until the latch. Your father does the only thing this family will actually remember about Black Monday, the thing that will be told at every Christmas table this tribe sets for the next 60 years, long after the riot itself has shrunk to a line in the telling. He reaches into his breast and brings out, rolled tight and creased across the middle where the crowd crushed it against him and he would not let it go. He braced his arm over it, he admits under questioning, like a man guarding his heart. That is where the knuckles happened. That is the full and ridiculous truth of the wall. A single sheet of music. He smooths it on the kitchen table with both hands, once, twice tenderly among the teacups. The Lost Chord, Sullivan, 4d Novello's edition 4 days early. I stood in the dark 2 hours to keep it flat, he says. Happy birthday, Louisa. It wanted only the riot. And your mother, who has hemmed pillow slips for 90 minutes with the West End burning in her ears, who buried the fear so deep even you only saw its collar. Your mother puts both hands over her face and laughs and cries exactly together for the space of about 4 heartbeats. Then she takes down the tin and dresses his knuckles with goose grease and camphor, so that your father goes to bed on Black Monday smelling precisely like Alice's fever. And the last thing you hear through the wall is the 2 of them, low, and then, once, both of them laughing helplessly at nothing anyone will ever explain to you. Tuesday morning, 7 o'clock precisely. The tissue paper comes out of the left-hand dresser drawer. The spare collar, 9 years a lifeboat, 3rd launching, goes to its stud, white as ever. The coat's shoulder seam was sewn by lamplight overnight, invisible mending, your mother's needle at its finest under the family's finest silence, and your father walks down Asham Street to the depot between all the other black coats, indistinguishable, punctual, clean, as if the 8th of February had happened to some other city entirely. That is what respectability is for, you understand finally. Watching him go from the window with the baby heavy on your hip. It is not for show. It is a wall you build every single ordinary day, collar by doorstep by rent book, so that on the one day the world cracks its glass from Pall Mall to Oxford Street, your family can stand behind the wall and mend and laugh at midnight and walk out whole in the morning. The house works because someone makes it work. All the houses do. The strange days afterwards deserve a word because they are stranger in a quiet way than the Monday itself, and history mostly forgets them. On the Tuesday, a fog comes down, a real one, a thick yellow lid on the whole city, and under the cover of it London, which has just discovered it can be frightened, frightens itself. Rumour runs through the fog like rats through a wall. 10,000 men are marching up from Deptford. 30,000 are coming down from the north. They are sacking Whitechapel. No, Camberwell, no. They are an hour from wherever you happen to be standing. Always an hour, always coming. None of it is true. Not one word, the columns never existed. But for 2 days half the shops in London stand shuttered at noon on the strength of it, and the police telegraphs stutter with sightings of armies no one ever finds, and even on Asham Street, even in your own scullery, Tuesday's wash is wrung out to the sound of Mrs. Dawes's lodger reporting through the fog in a voice of happy doom the latest position of phantoms. Your mother's contribution to the great panic of the 9th of February is to go on mangling. They found 10,000 men in the fog, did they, she says, feeding a sheet to the rollers straight. I couldn't find 10,000 men in this city with dry boots and a day's work. Mind your end, Edie. And that, on the 9th of February 1886, is very nearly the most sensible sentence spoken in London. What is true is this. Within the week, the Lord Mayor's Fund for the Relief of the Unemployed, the Mansion House Fund, the papers call it, swells like a river in thaw. Guilt is a great giver. Tens of thousands of pounds go into it in days, from the same square mile that swept up its own windows on the Tuesday morning, and 1 shilling of it entered in no newspaper, but entered, I promise you, in a black oilcloth ledger against the word fund, in a small upright hand, comes out of a 6-room house in Kentish Town that could tell you to the farthing what a shilling costs. You asked her. You couldn't help it. The ledger was your business too now. That was settled in December. Why? With the margin barely healed. Your mother screwed the lid back on the ink and gave you the other half of your father's lesson, the half the men at the gates taught her. Because your father stood 2 hours in a dark shop and came home. There's wives this week whose men stood in the cold all winter and have nothing to come home to. The wall's for keeping trouble out, Edith. It's not for pretending trouble isn't real. We can spare a brick. And then, because it always does, because this is the deepest fact about it, and the reason it holds 10 million lives together, the ordinary comes back. It comes back the way the thaw comes. No trumpet, just a different sound in the gutters one morning, water moving where ice was, and the water butt unbuttoned from its sacking, and the first Monday in March when the wash dries outdoors, cracking on the line in a wind with actual kindness in it. The riot slides backwards down the newspapers, page by page, until it is a committee inquiring into the conduct of the police, which is where London stores its earthquakes. The men are still at the gates, fewer as the building trades unfreeze, but there, and your father never walks past them any differently again, and neither, all his life, does Walter. And at number 7, the year you have spent with me starts to close its ring. March again, wash days again, the copper's Monday thump, the airing horse folded back to its summer station, the whole great wheel arriving back where you boarded it, except that nothing on the wheel is quite where it was. And now, before the light goes, let me show you each of them once more, because you have earned the seeing. Tom. The argument that ran all year in 3 moves ends in none of the ways anyone planned. Black Monday ends it, not with a speech, with a walk. The Saturday after, your father takes Tom alone, down to the depot, exactly as he took Walter, but not to the gates, inside. Up the iron stair to the goods office, quiet on the weekend, 20 high desks and the great ledgers sleeping on them, and he shows Tom the daybook for the 8th of February. A full page, wagon after wagon, entered in his own hand, every line level, and only the date to say the city was breaking its glass 2 miles south while the ink dried. There's the riot, your father says, as it looks from a desk a man holds by his own worth. Trade shook, the funds shook, half the West End shook. This page didn't. Now choose your own road, and I'll back you on any honest one. The choosing's yours from today. That's what I brought you to hear. And Tom, who wanted wages because wanting to matter was the only shape of wanting he knew, stands a long time looking at that steady page and chooses the examination. He goes back in September to Standard 6 with his jaw set exactly like his father's, and the shaving mirror gets used first the morning of the arithmetic paper, on a chin that needs it, at most, ambitiously. You will want to know, I expect, so he passes. Junior clerk, eventually goods department, Midland Railway. 40 years, every rivet in a book, Fanny. At the school prize giving in the spring, before the whole school and the visiting member of the board, Francis Hobbs, Standard 4, walks up for the composition prize. A book, of course, red boards, gilt edges, presented with a handshake. And what matters is not the book. What matters is that her teacher, handing it over, says to the room, "We hope for great things from this one." And then quietly to Fanny alone, under the applause, the sentence Fanny will bring home held flat against her chest exactly the way her father once carried a sheet of music. Come and see me before you finish Standard 6. There are ways for a girl who'll work. There are ways. Monitor, pupil teacher, the long steep ladder. It is all ahead of her, years of it, and none of it certain. But you share a bed with Fanny. You are the one she tells in the dark, in the smallest voice there is. And I can tell you that on the night of the prize giving, the smallest voice in the bed says, for the first time out loud, "Miss Hobbs," and then dares you to laugh. And you do not laugh. Walter. You've had Walter's year already. All of it, in one yellow paper and one cold walk. Add only that in April he shoots up an inch, inherits Tom's boots resoled, and is discovered by your father to have, of all the strands in the rope, a clean quick head for figures, which pleases and horrifies his parents in equal measure, like finding a racehorse in the coal cellar. Alice paints. The Christmas paint box turns out not to be a present, but a door. She paints her country at last, the one in her head. Green skies and a river, she says, runs through the parlour, and 10 small figures in a row on a hill above a grey sea of roofs, which is the heath, of course, done from memory, and which your mother, saying nothing, puts in a 6-penny frame and hangs in the parlour, where it hangs beside the Queen for the next 30 years. George conquers the drain, captains the wooden boat, and in May at the spring cleaning is formally promoted to a task of his own. He polishes the fire irons badly, weakly, with a pride that cannot be looked at directly. May turns 3 and begins issuing her decrees in full sentences to general dismay, and Ernest walks, It happens on a Tuesday afternoon in April on the kitchen lino, between the table leg and your mother's apron, a distance of perhaps 5 feet which he crosses upright, swaying, arms high like a small drunk king, with the entire available family frozen mid-task around him. You with the iron actually in your hand halfway to a collar, and the honour of the catch, by right and justice, is your mother's, who goes down on her knees on the hard floor with her arms out, and the 8th child of the House of Hobbs staggers the last foot and falls, crowing into the 9th pair of hands that has ever waited for him there, and over his head your mother looks up at you, 14 going 15, iron in hand, second mother, keeper of the other end of every burden in this house. And what passes between you is not a word. There is no word. It doesn't need one. Somebody has to see each first step is what passes. Somebody has to be standing in the kitchen when it comes. That is the whole of it. That is the work. And you are here, and your mother herself. One more thing in the spring, and I will give it to you exactly as the house gives it to you, which is sideways and with dignity, because that is how this class of England speaks of it. In May, your mother begins, quietly, to let out her Sunday dress. She says nothing. She will say nothing for a good while yet. Announcements are not made in this house. They are noticed. You notice on the Sunday. Mrs. Dawes, who has noticed everything on this street for 40 years, notices the same week and begins, without one word exchanged, saving her lodger's outgrown flannel. The cradle with the rockers worn flat on one side, which went up to the little room over the scullery in March when Ernest left it, is not sold, is not lent, stands waiting in the dim like a boat drawn up above the tide line. 10 under one roof, your mother said on the heath, while we still are 10. She knew when she said it, you think now. She's always about 4 months ahead of the ledger, your mother, in everything. The family of 10 is quietly becoming the next thing a family of 10 becomes. The arithmetic will simply have to be done again, and it will be on Friday nights by 2 heads bent over 1 sixpenny book, and that is all the year will say on the matter, and it is as enough. Which leaves one jar. It has stood on the kitchen shelf since August, up beside the tea caddy, with outing pasted on it in ledger capitals, and it has survived. Think what it has survived. It has survived a measles winter that emptied the savings line for a month. It has survived a riot, a fog panic, a coal ledger bleeding all January, Boots Christmas, and the daily sight of it hanging at eye level above a family of 10 in which every single member above the age of 4 could name 6 urgent uses for its contents. Nobody touched it. Your father fed it its farthing that first night like a vow, and after that it ate what the weeks could spare. A halfpenny here, the rag and bone pennies, the odd 3-penny bit on a Good Friday, once, magnificently, half a crown in December when the Midland paid its clerks a small Christmas consideration, and your father walked past the tobacconist with his consideration intact. By May it holds, counted twice at the kitchen table by you and Tom under the supervision of the entire population of the house, £1, 4 shillings, and 7 pence halfpenny. And in May, London opens the very thing your mother's sentence on the heath was waiting for, though she could not have known it. On the 4th of May, 1886, the Queen herself, in the sunshine at South Kensington, with a hymn sung by thousands and the Prince of Wales beside her, opens the Colonial and Indian Exhibition, the great show of the year, of several years, the whole empire brought under glass and iron in the exhibition grounds, and all summer London talks of it, and the papers publish maps of it, and Fanny reads the maps aloud at tea like scripture. A shilling admission, children half price. And here is where, being a railway family pays its quiet dividend, the perquisite worth more than a rise. Privileged tickets, the clerk's right to cheap travel for his own, so that the getting there, which for 10 people is no small sum of its own, comes to shillings, not half sovereigns. Your father does the whole calculation one Friday night in June, with the ledger open, and the jar decanted onto the table in little towers of copper and silver, and the family stands round the table as if round a font, and the arithmetic, for once in this whole story, comes out with room to spare. So, a Saturday in late June 1886, the one great outing, all 10, they're up at 5 as if for a wedding, boots done overnight in a row by the fender, 10 pairs, blacked to a regimental gleam by Tom and Walter working in silent, furious rivalry. Sunday clothes on a Saturday, which alone tells the younger children that the day has broken all known law. Bread and dripping eaten standing, too excited for chairs, and the perambulator left, actually left, with Mrs. Dawes, because Ernest at 18 months will ride shoulders and hips today, pass down the family like the loving parcel he is. And Mrs. Dawes on her step to see you off as if launching a ship, with a peppermint apiece for the children from a paper bag she pretends she happened to have. Train from Kentish Town, change and down by the Underground to South Kensington, the little ones' faces at the carriage window the whole way, and then up out of the station with the crowd, everyone's crowd, all of London's classes shoulder to shoulder, silk and fustian, parasols and shawls, and along and in. And I will let you see it now the way you see it then, which is all at once and too much and never to be forgotten. The courts of the whole empire, one after another, under acres of glass, an Indian palace with a carved gateway 40 feet high, teak and marble, courtyards within courtyards, and, Alice is not breathing, you check, real weavers from India at real looms, silk running up under their fingers in colours Asham Street does not contain, and brass workers tapping out bowls, and a man tooling leather, artisans brought from the other side of the earth, working here in front of a 6-year-old from Kentish Town who will paint green skies about it for a year, jungles done in glass cases, tigers, stuffed, Walter establishes immediately and is none the less respectful. Elephants' howdahs you may look at and one you may nearly touch. The courts of Canada, all timber and grain, and a smell of pine like the inside of a new drawer. Australia with wool bales and a gold nugget under guard, at which Tom looks for a long financial moment. Ceylon with its tea and the Cape, and trophies of everywhere, and overhead the summer light coming down through the glass onto the 10 of you moving through it in your black boots, hand in hand in hand, a small linked chain of Kentish Town paying its shilling to see what its collars and coppers and clerked wagons are, at the far end of every ledger for. Your father hires no guidebook. He is the guidebook. He has read the maps as closely as Fanny and pretends he hasn't, and he steers his fleet from court to court with the quiet command of a man who has waited 11 months to give his family the empire, and at the Indian palace he lifts May up to see the weavers, and over her head he catches your mother's eye and holds it, 2 seconds, 3, a look with a whole year in it, the heath, the sentence, the jar, the winter that tried to eat it, and your mother, who does not make announcements, makes one now with her face only, and it says, "Yes, Fred," It is grand. They will none of them forget it, and nor shall I. There is tea at a refreshment table, a shilling and 8 pence entered without flinching. In the mental ledger every Hobbs over 10 is involuntarily keeping, and buns, and George is lost for 4 minutes, the family's traditional observance, and found before the Canadian timber negotiating. And towards evening comes the thing the papers promised and no Hobbs quite believed. The lamps. Electric light. Thousands of lamps coming up together in the dusk under the glass. Gardens and fountains lit like day. Like better than day. Like nothing there is a word for on Ascham Street, where the streets are gas, and the house is oil, and a candle is a considered expense. 10 people stand by a lit fountain in a crowd of thousands and look at the actual future switched on in front of them. "No wicks," says Walter at last into the silence, having worked at the problem from every side, and for once in his life nobody laughs at him, because no one can improve on it. You get them home by 10, asleep in relays across the carriage, George on Tom's shoulder, May on yours, Ernest flat out against his father's watch chain, one bootlace lost to history, and the jar's last 6 pence unspent, returned next morning to the empty jar where it sits alone, seed corn, because the label stays on. There will be other years. That is what the 6 pence says. This family plants its luck, and that the lamps, the looms, the linked hands under the glass, is the crest of the year I promised you, the bright answer to the dark Monday in February. London showed you both in 5 months, the world breaking its windows and the world lit like morning at nightfall. And both times this family stood at the edge of the great event, holding hands in its best boots, and went home together, up the same streets, to the same 6 rooms, and banked the fire, and wound the clock. After that, the summer runs down the way summers do, and I will let it run. School breaks. The copper thumps its Mondays, the wash dries white and quick in the yard wind. The new baby's flannel mounts hemmed in the bottom drawer, and the cradle comes down in September and is oiled and rocked empty once with the thumb for practice. Tom sits his examination with a shaved chin. Fanny keeps her appointment with her teacher, and comes home walking on air 2 inches above the pavement. The piano learns at last its owner's song, because you save your errand pennies through the spring, you and your soda-scalded hands, and you practice the lost chord in stolen quarter hours, with the soft pedal down until the crease across the middle of the sheet has gone soft as cloth from turning, and on your mother's next birthday you sit her in the parlour in the good chair, and you play it for her, all through, both hands, not perfectly. The great chord itself you fumble and catch and hold, and your mother sits with her hands flat on her apron and her eyes closed the whole length of it, and when it ends she says only, "Again," and you play it again, and that half hour of everything this year has held is the thing you would keep if you could keep one. The seasons have gone all the way round now, and a little more, March to March, and on into the second summer. You are 15. The house is 14 feet wide, and it holds 10 people, soon to be numbered again, and it works, and you know now, you have known since the night of the mending basket, since the page that stayed level while the glass came down, exactly why it works, and what it costs, and who pays, and in what coin, in kettles, in collars, in Friday sums and Monday coppers, in a woman's even stitches and a girl's chapped hands, in farthings dropped nightly into a jar with a paper label. Click, like a very small vow, kept. Nobody will write this year down. That is the last thing to say about it. and I want it said plainly here, while the light in the kitchen is going blue and the house is quieting overhead. The riot is in the newspapers. The exhibition is in the guidebooks. The Queen and the Commissioner and Mr. Arthur Sullivan are all safely in history. But the year itself, the 14 buckets on a Monday, the top and tail bed, the joint stretched to Thursday, the spare collar in its tissue, the red dark room and the breaking sweat. The yellow paper burned without a word. The sums that came out right by 1 shilling, 'cause a woman willed them to. No one is writing that in any book but a black oilcloth one. 6pence from the stationer, corners gone soft as cloth. History keeps the glass palaces. The engine that ran underneath them, in a million small houses exactly like this one, kept no records and asked for none. It only asked that morning come and someone be up before it, raking the fire with a baby on her hip. You were that someone this year of your life. Whoever you were, and history never bothered to write your name, and the loan of your eyes is nearly done, and whatever became of you, the trade you married into, or the schoolroom Fanny's Road may have shown you, or the long plain years of any of it, the record is silent, and I will not invent what the record does not hold. Whoever you were, the house stood because you held your end. That is known. That much is in the evidence of every scrubbed doorstep in every photograph of every street like yours. Somebody held every one of those houses up. Good. Then let the house hold you now for the last few minutes of tonight. It knows how. It is a night in that second summer, an ordinary one, chosen from all the ordinary nights precisely because nothing happens in it. A Thursday, say. The ranger's banked, the damper in, the fire settled down to its long red murmur under the crust of small coal, keeping tomorrow's heart alive under the ash. The airing horse stands folded by the wall on its summer holiday. The kitchen table is scrubbed and bare, but for the loaf in its crock and the black ledger squared to the dresser's edge. Thursday's page ruled and waiting for Friday's pencil. The doorstep is white. The rent book is stamped. The 2 columns this week will meet and pass with a shilling to spare, and the shilling will walk to the post office on Saturday, and the wall will be 1 brick stronger, and nobody in England will ever know. Come up the stairs one last time. You know the map. 3rd step, left side, quiet. 6th step, skip it altogether. You could do it. You have done it. With a sleeping child on each arm. The boys' room first, over the scullery, where the window rattles its old soft rattle as the late goods train goes down to St. Pancras, wagon after wagon after wagon, every one of them entered in somebody's book. Tom sleeps with one arm flung out and his boots squared under the bed like a soldier's, and Walter sleeps entirely diagonal, as he does everything 1 foot out of the covers, dreaming. You would put money on it at the naphtha stalls of speed. Your parents' door, ajar the width of a hand, the width it has stood ajar for 15 years so that a mother may hear 8 children breathe. The cradle waits in the corner with its rockers worn flat on one side, oiled, ready, patient as autumn. May in her cot with the rag doll's button eyes keeping watch, and Ernest promoted to the cot's other end, top and tail already, learning the family trade in his sleep, and the back bedroom, the girls' room, yours. Alice at the bed's foot, home again from her far green country for the night, breathing slow. Fanny beside you with her hair in its plait, and the red ink pen on the chair where she can see it first thing, and somewhere behind her closed eyes a schoolroom with her own name on the door, coming nearer at the speed of years, and you, Edith, second mother, keeper of the other end, 15 now, lying in the warm dip of a bed that has held you all your life in the middle of the only wealth this house has ever banked. Everyone under the one roof, everyone fed, everyone breathing, the fire safe, the door bolted, the week almost balanced. You do not yet know, and I will only do this once and gently, that the quiet you can feel tonight is a between time, that in another year the square where the trouble started will fill again, and worse, and the papers will need a darker name for a darker Sunday, that the men at the gates are not the end of a bad winter but the beginning of a long question the new century will be built out of answering, that the little room over the scullery will empty and fill twice more, that the horse will give way to the motor in these very streets, and the gas to those impossible lamps, and that the world your children's children will call ordinary would strike this kitchen dumb. You do not know any of it. That is the mercy of nights. A night is one room of time, 14 feet wide, and nothing enters it but breathing. So let the sums rest. They come out. Not by much. They were never going to come out by much. By much was never the assignment. But they come out tonight, this week, this year, and that is the whole victory there is at this altitude of the world, and it is enough. You are tired enough, warm enough, safe enough. Say it the way the house says it, beam to joist, settling. Enough, enough, enough. The hands can stop now. The hands that raked the fire before 6, that carried the 14 buckets, that fed the sheets in straight, that spread the dripping to the crust's edges, that dressed the barked knuckles and steadied the first steps and found the soft pedal in the dark. They are open now on the counterpane, palms up, off duty. Let them be. There is no kettle in the world that needs you before morning. Listen to the house go down for the night, room by room, the way you have heard it 1,000 times and never once listened all the way to the end. The range ticking as the iron cools, slower and slower. The clock in the parlour, walking its small circle among the sleeping china dogs. A last cart somewhere over on the high street fading. The water pipe's single knock. Next door's dog, twice, and done. The long express north, far off, pulling its sound away up the line like a thread drawn out until you cannot say when it becomes silence. 10 people breathing in 6 rooms, each at their own pace, and all the paces slowly, slowly agreeing. Tomorrow there will be the fire to rake, and the loaf to cut, and the collar to stud. Tomorrow there will be the copper or the irons or the black lead. Whichever day of the week tomorrow decides to be. Tomorrow the ledger, the doorstep, the boots, the bells. But that is tomorrow, and tomorrow is on the other side of the dark, and the dark is wide tonight, and slow, and warm, and it belongs entirely to you. Centuries will pass. The street you know will change past finding. The terraces will fill with strangers' strange machines. The coal fires will go out one by one until a whole city forgets the smell of its own winters. The copper will become a museum piece that children stare at, unbelieving, and the tin bath will hang on its nail until the nail itself is history. The house will be numbered and renumbered, knocked about, done up, sold for sums that would stop your mother's heart. But people will still be up before 6 with a baby on one hip, still counting the week's money at a kitchen table, moving a finger down the column, making it stretch, still keeping one room or one shelf or one small thing better than they can afford because a family needs proof of itself, still standing in the doorway of a room where everyone they love is asleep, counting breaths without meaning to. Some things do not change. The engine does not change. Love that looks like work and work that is secretly love that has never once changed, and it is running in your house tonight, whoever you are listening, in whatever century your fire is banked. So let it come now. Let sleep take you the way it took a girl of 15 in the back bedroom of a 14-foot house on Asham Street, Kentish Town, 140 years ago, quickly, kindly, mid-thought, the way it takes everyone who has honestly emptied the day. Let the wash day go. Let the buckets go. Let the columns and the coppers and the collars go, everyone. They're all entered. The book is squared. Let the house hold the night watch for once, with its bolted door and its banked fire and its 10 slow breathings, none of them yours to count any more. Let the world fade the way the express fades up the northern line, further and softer and further still, until you cannot say when it becomes silence. You kept your end up. The house stood. Everyone is home. You've earned this rest. All of it. Take it. And dream, if you dream at all, of a warm kitchen in the early dark and a small fire catching and everything about to begin. Good night.